The Eagles lose. And once again, they become the laughingstock of the league. They simply fail to reach the playoffs. The pressure suffocates their coach, Grant Taylor, who has held the position for years without a winning season. After the defeat, Grant returns to Shiloh, the school, only to receive an even harsher blow. His star player has transferred to the rival team. "I was tired of being a loser," they tell him. Grant gathers the team to deliver the news, and morale plummets immediately. Brock, one of the players, says it bluntly, "Then we're already done for." Grant reprimands him, warning that they cannot start the season with that attitude, though deep down he knows Brock is right. They will need a miracle to change their fate. Tired and discouraged, Grant barely makes it home. His car has broken down, and he has no money to repair it. Upon arriving, his wife gives him another blow. She took a pregnancy test, and once again the result is negative. After years of trying, they still cannot form a family. Frustration mounts for Grant, both at home and on the field. Meanwhile, their biggest rivals, the Richland Giants, are preparing confidently. They have better resources, more players, and the backing of 3 consecutive championships. Their coach, Bobby Lee Duke, does not hide his arrogance. He openly declares that the Giants are used to winning and have no intention of losing, warning the others to better prepare for disappointment. This film was written, directed, and even acted in by Alex Kendrick, a Christian pastor who seeks to fuse theology with cinema. Therefore, it incorporates a key Christian symbol, the giants. In the Bible, the Israelites, the people supposedly chosen by God, face the Philistines, an enemy army with a powerful secret weapon, the giant Goliath. Goliath is described as a man measuring 6 cubits and a span, which, according to some interpretations, equals about 3 meters in height. His armor was imposing and heavy. He wore a bronze helmet and a metal breastplate that weighed more than 50 kilograms. Additionally, he had an enormous spear whose tip weighed 7 kilograms. Confident and full of arrogance, Goliath stood before his small opponents and declared, "Today I challenge the camp of Israel. Give me a man to fight me." But his presence intimidated the Israelite army so much, including their king, that no one dared to confront him. The parallel between this story and that of the Eagles is evident. Just like the Israelites, the Eagles represent a small team, full of insecurity and fear, facing an important, powerful, and arrogant rival. The Eagles face another game, but once again end up defeated. They lose 23-0. Completely frustrated, Grant tries to get home, but his car fails again. Upon arrival, Brooke, his wife, gives him an even more heartbreaking piece of news. She visited a fertility specialist, who confirmed that she is perfectly healthy. This means that the problem with conceiving falls on Grant. With each accumulated failure, a fear begins to grow. What if there is something fundamentally wrong with him? Can't he be the husband, the man, the coach, or the leader he needs to be? Grant feels that he will never be able to measure up to the circumstances. Meanwhile, Brock, the team player, is failing his classes. His indifferent attitude costs him dearly, and he ends up in detention. On the other hand, David, a freshman, practices soccer at home. He recently lost his mother, and his father, who is in a wheelchair, tries to encourage him to participate in some school sport. David reminds him that Shiloh doesn't have a soccer team. "You could join the football team as a kicker," his father suggests, "but they already have a very good one. Besides, he feels too small and weak." He does not like the idea of exposing himself to failure. His father, Larry, urges him to try, reminding him that he has nothing to lose and that failure is an inevitable part of life. In the story of the giant Goliath, there also appears a key character named David, who shares several parallels with this boy in the film, who is also named David. It is a story many of us know. David was a humble shepherd, with no military experience whatsoever. One day, his father sent him to the Israelite soldiers' camp to bring them food. When he arrived, he heard Goliath's shouts challenging the army of Israel. But, as I said before, no one dared to face him because they were terrified. David could not believe it. How could a man insult his people and God, and no one do anything? So, with courage, he decided that he would face Goliath. Everyone thought he was crazy. He was young, inexperienced, and small, while Goliath was a huge, seasoned warrior. But David explained that, while tending his sheep, he had faced lions and bears, and that God had always protected him. He was sure that this time, God would help him too. Thus, David confronted with what he knew, his sling, 5 smooth stones, and his faith in God. Goliath mocked him, but David was not intimidated. He replied that he did not trust weapons or his strength, but God. He ran toward Goliath, launched a stone with his sling, and hit him on the forehead. The stone struck with such force that the giant fell dead instantly. To make sure he would not get up, David took his sword and cut off his head. When the Philistines saw that their champion had been defeated, they ran away. Israel won the battle, and David was recognized as a hero. This story was first told approximately 3,000 years ago, and it continues to be narrated again and again in popular culture. Why? Because we all like to believe that someone small, weak, and inexperienced can overcome a powerful, terrifying, and seemingly invincible giant. All of us, at some point, have felt like David in front of a world full of Goliaths. David Childers, the character in this film, is a modern reflection of the biblical David. Just like the shepherd who had never received any training, this young man had only practiced soccer, never American football. Likewise, it is his father who motivates him to step onto the battlefield, which in this case is the playing field. But the most important similarity is that both were considered too small for the challenges they had to face. In this way, the film seems to be a modern reinterpretation of the myth of David and Goliath. But it does not limit itself to repeating the tale. As we will see later, it will add layers of complexity. One of the parents in the family approaches Owens, the assistant coach, and expresses his concern. Grant has not obtained the expected results, and he worries that his son is losing opportunities to obtain a college scholarship. He suggests that Owens would be a better choice as head coach. In fact, several parents have organized a meeting with the school administrators to discuss the issue. From afar, Grant watches the conversation and, although he tries to ignore it, he knows exactly what it is about. His fears are consuming him more and more. David Childers arrives, accompanied by his father, and asks Grant for the opportunity to try out for the team. The start is not good. David misses several shots and fails to score. However, with some practice, he begins to improve and demonstrates that he can contribute to the team. Although he is not completely ready yet, Grant sees his potential and decides to accept him. At school, Grant observes Mr. Bridges, an elderly teacher who every afternoon walks by the lockers praying for the students. The first game of the season arrives. The Eagles face an easy opponent, yet they lose again. Frustrated, Grant confronts the team. He rebukes them for giving up before even trying. "You lose mentally long before you lose on the field," he tells them. They are not committed. They skip practice due to detentions and seem more interested in having fun with their friends than working as a team. Grant asks them, "If we don't win games, then why are we here?" At home, David confesses to his father that, deep down, he is glad he wasn't put in the game. That way he does not have to face the possibility of failing and being ridiculed. His father gently admonishes him, telling him not to think that way. He assures him that God has a purpose for him. Frustrated, David asks, "Then why did he make me so small and weak?" His father replies, "So that God can show how great he is through you." Grant visits the doctor and receives news that ultimately sinks him: he cannot have children. The problem lies with him. He feels devastated, convinced that he has failed to give his wife what she longed for. That night, he stays in the office late, trying to process the news. On his way out, he accidentally overhears a conversation that further disturbs him. It is the meeting of the parents with the school administrators, where they are discussing his dismissal. Everyone seems to agree that Grant does not have what it takes to lead the team to victory. He arrives home defeated. Nothing he does seems to go right. He is convinced that there is something deeply wrong with him. In addition to David Childers, the film presents us with another analogy for little David facing a giant, Grant, an ordinary man whose Goliath is not a physical enemy, but the daily hardships of life. Although at first glance his problems may seem ordinary, work conflicts, marital tensions, personal insecurities, for him they feel like giants that overwhelm him, paralyze him, and make him feel completely overpowered. In life, we all face moments when we feel like David, small, weak, and unable to overcome the challenges before us. These giants can come in many forms: family problems, relationship conflicts, overwhelming responsibilities, financial difficulties, health issues, or dreams that seem impossible to achieve. They overwhelm us because we feel that we do not have the tools or the strength necessary to face them. They make us doubt our abilities and convince us that we will never find a way to move forward. What are the giants you face in your life? What is it that makes you feel you can never overcome? The next morning, Grant goes out into the garden with a Bible in hand. Desperate, he begs God for help. He feels that he no longer has the strength to face the problems that are increasingly choking him. In the next game, the opportunity for a decisive kick arises. Grant gives David the responsibility to try it. Larry, his father, watches him from his wheelchair and encourages him. David prepares, takes the kick, and misses. When the game ends, the team has lost again, and David feels guilty. He does not like that he was given a chance to try, because deep down he knew from the start that he was going to fail. His father gently scolds him, reminding him that if he thinks that way, he will never win. Your actions follow your thoughts. If you accept defeat before you even start, that is what you will always get. The next day, Mr. Bridges, the teacher who prays for the students, meets with Grant. Noticing his discouragement, he shares a Bible quote with him: "What God opens, no one can close, and what He closes, no one can open. Even though you have little strength, you have kept my word and have not denied my name." With these words, he seeks to remind him to trust in God. What God opens remains open, and that means Grant still has the opportunity to achieve what he so dearly longs for. Grant confesses that he has been praying, but he feels that God is not acting. He has not granted him the miracle he so desperately needs. Bridges responds with a story. There were two farmers who desperately needed rain. Both prayed to God for help, but only one prepared his field and sowed his seeds, trusting that the rain would come. God will send the rain when He is ready, but you must be prepared to receive it. Bridges asks, which of the two farmers are you? Although the film has a strong focus on Christian faith, the message it conveys can be universal. Faith, in the end, is not exclusive to religion. Having hope, whether in God, the universe, life, or time to make things right, does not mean we should remain passive, necessarily waiting for everything to happen on its own. It is also necessary to act, identify what is in our hands, work consistently, and take concrete steps toward our goals. Wishing for change is not enough. We need to strive to do what we can. True faith is not passive. It involves actively building the future we want, while trusting that our decisions and efforts will bear fruit over time. Grant reflects and understands that, although he trusts that God will help him, he must not sit back with his arms folded. As the saying goes, pray to God and swing the hammer. He decides to rethink his purpose as a coach and that of the team. The next day, he asks his players, "Why are we doing this?" The boys answer that they want to win games, get trophies, and eventually obtain scholarships. However, Grant questions whether those goals are truly meaningful. Winning games without a deeper purpose is an empty goal, he tells them. He explains that their true objective must be something more valuable, something that gives them meaning and direction as a team. Your purpose must be to honor God. The players are confused. How could football honor God? Grant explains that it is not just about the sport, but about giving everything they have in every action. By doing so, they would be demonstrating effort, commitment, and gratitude, honoring God in the process. He shares his new philosophy: you will give everything you have to God and trust that He will take care of the results. Brock mocks and comments that it all sounds like a sermon. He does not believe that the team has any chance of winning the next game, let alone the championship. Grant knows he must change his attitude, since Brock is a natural leader and one of the most influential players. In front of everyone, he proposes a challenge, the death drag, an exercise in which one must crawl across the field with a teammate on his back. Brock, confident, says he can reach the 30-yard line, but Grant challenges him not to focus on the distance, but on giving his maximum effort. To avoid distractions, he blindfolds him. Brock starts confidently and asks, how much longer until the finish line? But Grant tells him to just keep going, that the only thing that matters is giving everything he has. As he advances, exhaustion begins to weigh on him, and he wants to stop. But Grant motivates him to continue. He must not give up until he has given his all. Brock is exhausted. His legs are at their limit, but Grant continues to encourage him. Despite the pain, Brock keeps going. As his teammates watch in amazement, finally, Brock collapses on the ground, completely spent. When he removes the blindfold, he discovers that he not only reached the 30-yard line or even the 50-yard line, he crossed the entire field. Grant reminds him that he is the most influential player on the team and that his attitude affects the others. He has more potential than he himself believes, and he must not waste it. The team is inspired. They realize that they are capable of achieving much more than they had believed possible. Here we have just seen how Grant uses a great strategy to help Brock discover what he is capable of. Instead of allowing him to see the giant before him, the entire field, and letting him be intimidated by its size, he decides to blindfold him. In this way, he eliminates the distraction of fear and forces him to focus solely on what he can control, his effort, his ability, and his will to do his best. Without seeing the giant, Brock stops measuring his ability against the size of the challenge. Instead, he focuses on moving forward step by step, and thus achieves much more than he thought possible. Not because the giant has disappeared, but because he has stopped giving power to fear. This scene leaves us an extremely important message. Many times, we have the strength and the tools necessary to face the Goliaths in our lives, but our mind works against us, exaggerating the size of the problem and convincing us that we cannot overcome it. We end up losing the mental game before even facing the physical challenge. Just like David in the biblical account, to overcome our giants, we must try to stop focusing on their size and not allow what seems insurmountable to intimidate us. David did not worry about what he lacked, such as armor or military experience. Instead, he focused on what he did have, a sling, some stones, and his trust in God. In the same way, we must recognize our slings and stones, the strengths, abilities, and tools we already possess. The real battle does not begin when we face the problem, but when we decide how to face it. So, here comes a good question to ponder: what are your slings and stones? What internal and external resources do you have to face your challenges? If you stop focusing on the size of the threat, what strengths can you identify in yourself? Inspired by their coach, the players begin to draw closer to God. They start praying and adopting a more positive attitude. They commit to giving their maximum effort, support each other, and work better as a team. Their change not only impacts the group but also the school. They inspire the community to renew their faith and rethink their priorities. Matt, one of the players, experiences a significant change. He becomes more humble, responsible, and aware, something his father notices immediately. He recognizes that this change is the result of Grant's influence. In the next game, the team takes the field with a new mentality. Brock leads a prayer, committing to praise God regardless of the outcome. They have understood that their purpose is not only to win games, but to honor God with their actions. Again, although the film has a strong Christian background, its message can be understood in a universal way. The Eagles have changed their perspective. They stopped focusing solely on individual goals, like winning games or excelling personally, and found a purpose greater than themselves. In the film, this process is described as honoring God, but for those who do not share these religious beliefs, it could be interpreted as finding a meaningful purpose that transcends individuality. Having a goal bigger than ourselves is important because it gives us a deeper motivation. When we have a significant purpose, the effort we put into our actions naturally grows. They step onto the field and seem like a completely transformed team. They are focused, give their maximum effort, and manage to defeat their opponents. It is the victory they so desperately needed. Inspired, Brock brings this same mentality to his studies, and soon he achieves great improvements. In the next game, they win again. And they keep winning. They train with dedication, and the results reflect it. During a game, it is David's turn as kicker. He faces the decisive moment. He looks to his father, who cheers him on from his wheelchair. He concentrates, takes the kick, and scores. He feels proud. His effort has paid off. The next day, Grant leaves the school and discovers that his car is not where it should be. He finds a truck with a note: "The impact you have had on our school is greater than you imagine. We want to help you as you have helped us. This truck is for you." Overwhelmed with emotion, Grant thanks God for providing for his needs. From a corner, Matt and his father watch in silence, satisfied. Was it really God who gave Grant the truck, or was it Matt and his father? The film suggests that it was thanks to Grant's unwavering faith that God arranged his plans to provide him with what he needed. However, we can also interpret this scene from a more secular perspective. Grant faced many challenges, but he never stopped trusting that God would help him. At the same time, he took action, he worked hard, committed to his team, and strove to improve in his professional life. Over time, that effort began to bear fruit, and the people around him decided to give back by gifting him the truck he so needed. So, was it God who intervened, or was it the result of Grant's actions and dedication? Or, in other words, does faith really work, have an impact, or is it just an illusion? Perhaps answering that question is not the most important thing. In the end, the result was the same: Grant got what he needed. His faith motivated him to strive, persist, and reach his goals. So, does it really matter whether the blessings came directly from God or not? If faith, whether religious or not, drives us to face challenges and give our best, then it is not an illusion, but an incredibly powerful tool. The Eagles win 5 consecutive games and make the playoffs. They are ready to face the Panthers. Grant motivates the players, and they give everything on the field. But it is not enough. They lose the elimination game and are devastated. However, one of the boys reminds them, "If we win, we praise God. If we lose, we also praise Him." With this attitude, they accept the defeat and head home. But their effort will not be in vain. Grant receives a phone call that changes everything. He gathers his team and gives them an unexpected piece of news: the Panthers cheated. They have been disqualified. The Eagles will advance to the next round. The team erupts with excitement. They still have a chance to win the championship. In the elimination round, the Eagles give everything and manage to win. Now they will go to the championship against the dreaded Giants. Grant arrives early at the field and offers a prayer to God: "You have brought us this far. May everything we do on this field honor you." Before the game, Grant gathers his players. They are about to face the strongest rival of the season, a fast, powerful, and undefeated team. However, he reminds them of everything they have achieved so far. They have overcome challenges that seemed impossible and proven their worth. He assures them that there are no limits. They take the field, and the Giants impose themselves with their presence. They are dressed in black and have an arrogant and aggressive attitude. The game begins, and from the first moment, the Giants dominate. Their defense dismantles without mercy. Their offense scores with ease, and the Eagles end up emotionally devastated. They go into halftime losing and feeling overwhelmed. Grant analyzes the situation. He knows that the Giants are faster and physically superior, but he identifies something that is in their favor: strategy. If they cannot win with strength, they will do so with intelligence. With this approach, he reorganizes the plays. They opt for risky moves and unexpected tactics that confuse the Giants. Gradually, the Eagles manage to recover and finally tie the game. This moment is a clear allusion to the story of David and Goliath. The biblical David knew that he had no chance of defeating Goliath in direct physical combat, since his strength did not compare to that of the giant. But instead of being intimidated, he used what he had to his advantage: his strategy and his sling, a simple weapon that he mastered. Instead of playing under Goliath's conditions, David changed the rules and focused on his own strengths. Likewise, the Eagles understood that they could not win using brute force. Their rival was faster, stronger, and more experienced. But instead of trying to match the opponent's conditions, they focused on their abilities, applied smart strategies, and found a way to tilt the game in their favor. The game is coming to an end. Brock is completely exhausted. He feels that he can no longer go on. Grant encourages him, telling him not to listen to his mind when it tells him to give up. "You only need 4 more plays." With renewed confidence, Brock gets up and motivates the other defenders. The Giants launch their plays, but the Eagles' defense stops them. 1, 2, 3 times. There is only one last attempt. Both teams prepare for the final play. The Giants attack, but the Eagles' defense holds, and there is a loose ball. The Eagles capture the ball and run toward their end zone, but are stopped before reaching it. There are only 2 seconds left on the clock. The Eagles' only chance is to attempt a field goal. They call on David. The boy is nervous. Until now, his best kick has been 39 yards, and this one is 51. It seems impossible. Grant reminds him not to think about the number or the result, but only to focus on giving his best. From the stands, Larry, David's father, tries to encourage him, but his son does not see him. Determined to catch his attention, Larry does the unthinkable. He gathers all his energy, leaves his wheelchair, and slowly stands up. Finally, David sees him. That moment fills him with courage. What seemed impossible stops being so. David decides to ignore the size of the challenge. He trusts in what he knows and leaves the rest in God's hands. The referee starts the play. David kicks and scores. The Eagles win the championship. The little David and his small team have defeated the powerful Giants. Grant is ecstatic. He arrives home after the game, and Brooke congratulates him for having achieved what once seemed impossible. But she gives him even more astonishing news: they are expecting a child. Grant cannot contain his emotion. He has received far more than he ever dreamed of. He kneels and thanks God for all his blessings. 2 years later, Grant and Brooke have a child and are expecting a second. In their living room, they proudly hang not 1, but 2 championship trophies. This is the story of how a little David overcomes a Goliath in multiple ways. First, David Childers overcomes his fear and makes the kick that worried him so much, managing to defeat the imposing rival team, the Giants. Second, Grant Taylor defeats a different giant: the problems of his daily life, work conflicts, marital difficulties, and his own insecurities. How did they both manage to overcome what seemed impossible? Just like in the biblical account of David and Goliath, it is not the size of the problem that necessarily determines the outcome, but how we face it. It is not only about brute strength, but about having the right mindset. We have all, at some point, felt like David in a world full of Goliaths, facing problems that seem impossible to overcome. But the Eagles team teaches us that our victories depend greatly on our attitude. Instead of focusing on what we lack or being paralyzed by fear, we must leverage our strengths, trust that we can solve the challenges, and give our best in what is within our reach. Thus, what once seemed impossible might be one step closer to becoming possible.